That day stands out as one of the most terrifying experiences of my childhood. Little did I know, 16 years later, an unexpected event would reignite those dark memories, bringing the past rushing back into the present. I was just 9 years old, living in a cozy home with my mom and our kitten. It had been a perfect trio until one day, our cat simply walked out the door and never returned. From then on, it was just me and my mom. School was a mere 5-minute stroll from our doorstep, a path I treaded daily. Each afternoon, I'd find myself home an hour before my mom returned from work. She had faith in my maturity, trusting me to be on my own. For just that brief hour, what indeed could happen in such a short time? Little did we know, even moments can unfold into eternity when fate steps in. I won't pretend it wasn't frightening being alone in our spacious house. The vast, empty rooms seemed to whisper, and shadows would dance in the corners of my eyes. Shapes and figures that vanished when I looked directly at them. My imagination often got the better of me, sending me sprinting upstairs to the safety of my room. Once there, I'd quickly lock the door behind me and lose myself in video games, seeking refuge in pixelated worlds until my mom's arrival broke the spell and it was time for homework. That particular day, I arrived home just like any other, following my usual routine to the letter. I locked the front door behind me and made a careful round to check that the back door leading to the patio was securely fastened as well. With everything double-checked, I rushed upstairs to my room, eager to dive into another afternoon of gaming. While I was lost in my game, a strange noise from outside my window snapped me back to reality. The sound was eerily similar to a cat's meow, which was haunting since our cat had vanished over 3 months ago. A surge of hope flashed through me. Could it be? Had she returned? With my heart pounding, I dashed downstairs and flung open the back door, eager for a joyful reunion. But instead of our missing cat, the sight that greeted me was so unsettling, it still sends goosebumps racing across my skin to this day. There, on the patio, stood a man. He was tall, his unkempt black hair falling over his eye in a way that gave him an eerie, obscured appearance. From his throat came a high-pitched sound, unsettlingly similar to a cat's meow. Frozen in place, I watched him with a mix of curiosity and growing dread. Suddenly, he turned, and our eyes locked in a prolonged, creepy stare that sent a shiver down my spine. The moment was so intense, so filled with unspoken threats, that I finally snapped out of my trance and let out a scream that echoed through the empty house. In a panic, I bolted back upstairs, my heart pounding as I slammed my bedroom door shut and twisted the lock into place. Frantically, I called my mom, who immediately dialed the police. I had never been so terrified. My entire body was shaking. I crawled under my bedsheets trying to hide from whatever was outside, but the eerie, high-pitched noises continued to seep in through the walls. They sounded almost strategic, like a twisted mimicry of our missing cat. Who is this guy? Does he know about the cat? Is he using that sound to lure me out? The questions spiraled through my mind as I lay there shivering and waiting for help to arrive. The tension and fear momentarily overwhelmed me, and I blacked out. Then I woke up to the sound of authoritative voices pierced the eerie silence. Police had arrived. Peering through my window, I could see the officers on the road adjacent to our yard, confronting the man. "What are you doing?" they shouted. "Get over here, or we will come down and arrest you." But the man didn't respond. Instead, his strange, high-pitched sounds grew even louder and more frequent. From my vantage point, I watched as 2 police officers, 1 man and 1 woman, they approached the man cautiously. Suddenly, the atmosphere ruptured with the most terrifying scream I had ever heard. It erupted from the man as he lunged at the officers. With shocking force, he charged the female officer, knocking her out cold in an instant. The male officer, now alone in restraining the assailant, managed to tase him. The man fell, shaking on the ground, still emitting those high-pitched screams as the officer swiftly handcuffed him. Immediately, he called for backup and an ambulance. I could feel tears beginning to stream down my cheeks. In that moment of vulnerability, my elderly neighbor noticed me from her place next door. She rushed over as she enveloped me in a comforting embrace, staying by my side until my mom arrived. The police, after securing the man in their car, assured us they would return to explain everything that had occurred, leaving us with a promise of answers, but a night filled with unease. Later that evening, the male officer returned to our house. I watched from a distance as he spoke with my mom in hushed, urgent tone. Even though I couldn't make out the words, the gravity of their conversation was clear from my mom's shocked expression and her occasional nods. She seemed to be absorbing some heavy, unsettling news. After the officer left, I asked her about it, but she wouldn't divulge any details. "You've been through enough today," she told me gently. Honestly, I was too frightened to press further. Part of me didn't want to know more. The mystery remained, adding another layer of anxiety to the night's already tense atmosphere. In the days following that terrifying encounter, sleep eluded me. Each night, I lay awake, every small noise a reminder of the man's chilling screams and the fear he had instilled in me. I dreaded the possibility of his return, my imagination turning shadows into threats. But as the night slowly passed without incident, my anxiety began to fade. Gradually, life resumed its normal rhythm. The man never came back, and the memory of that day started to fade into just another unsettling story from my past. "16 years had slipped by since that halting day, and I had since taken ownership of the house from my parents. The eerie memories of the man on the patio had long been relegated to the back of my mind, nearly forgotten. But one quiet evening, as I lay in bed engrossed in a book, a sudden noise from outside shattered the calm. Startled, I peeked out the window to see a figure clambering over the fence into my yard. Heart racing, I rushed downstairs and hesitantly opened the door, not sure what to expect. There he was, standing right before me, his eyes locking onto mine. Time seemed to freeze as we stared at each other. Then, breaking the silence, he began to emit those same high-pitched sounds that had haunted my childhood, eerily reminiscent of a cat's meow. For a moment, I was that frightened 9-year-old again, frozen in place by fear and a surreal familiarity of the situation. Recognition dawned on me as I stood there, paralyzed. The intruder was the same man from all those years ago, now visibly aged with streaks of gray in his hair. His presence was as unsettling as ever, yet there was something different about him this time. He continued to make those bizarre, high-pitched sounds, creating a surreal echo of the past. Then, curiously, he leaned slightly to peek inside the house as if searching for something or someone familiar. After a moment, his expression softened into a smile, a strange, almost poignant gesture, before he turned and quietly walked away, leaving me in the doorway, bewildered and shaken by the unexpected and ghostly reunion. This encounter, though undeniably bizarre, hadn't ignited the same acute terror as it had when I was 9. I needed to talk it out, to make sense of what had just happened, so I called my mom. She remembered the man immediately and her tone shifted as we spoke. There was a weight to her words. Then, she revealed the secret she had kept since that fateful day. The very thing the officer had told her all those years ago. Her revelation completely altered my perception of the man who had twice now, so mysteriously, appeared on my patio. My mom shared that the man, whose sudden appearances had so terrified me, was diagnosed with severe autism. He had been a resident at a nearby facility for individuals with mental challenges, located just 5 kilometers from our home. More poignantly, she revealed that he had lived in our house 21 years ago, up until his mother, his sole caregiver, had passed away. Displaced by her death, he was moved into the facility. The connection he felt to our home was strong-rooted in the routines and memories he had shared there with his mother. Likely, he returned, driven by a lingering hope or confusion, thinking he might still find his mother waiting for him in the familiar surrounding. Learning about his backstory stirred a complex whirl of emotions within me. On one hand, there was fear. His mental instability and his history of escaping made me worry about the possibility of violence or an unwelcome intrusion. But alongside the fear, a deep sympathy welled up inside me. It was heartbreaking to think of him returning to a place he associated with the warmth and care of his mother, seeking a comfort long lost to time. Even after 21 years, the memory of his mother and his former home had not faded in his mind. This poignant revelation softened my initial fright, replacing some of my anxiety with compassion for his profound and enduring loss. The following night, at roughly the same time, that familiar noise pierced the quiet again. My mind raced with the sensible option to call the police, but my heart pulled me towards a more radical decision. Compelled by a mix of fear and empathy, I descended the stairs and cautiously opened the door. There he was, standing just as he had before, with that same haunting expression and emitting those unsettling noises. Tentatively, I asked if he wanted to come in. As he approached, a part of me braced, half expecting him to lash out as he had with a police officer years ago. But instead, he simply walked past me into the house, his demeanor calm, yet still profoundly mysterious. Inside, his whole face lit up with a happiness that was pure and heartbreaking. He was back in the home he remembered, surrounded by echoes of days spent with his mom. It was so touching to see his joy that it almost brought tears to my eyes. He made himself at home on the couch, turned on the TV, and immediately switched it to cartoons. He was completely absorbed, lost in a moment of childlike peace. I didn't want to interrupt his joy, but I knew I had to let the facility know where he was. With a heavy heart, I made the call, and soon his caretakers came. They spoke to him gently, coaxing him to get ready to leave. As he stood up, tears began to roll down his cheeks. It was clear he didn't want to go. A couple of days later, I called the facility to talk about how we could make things better for him. We came up with a plan that would allow him to visit this home he loved, safely and with care. His name is Tom, and I now think of him as a friend. From the day he returned, every Sunday has become our special time. Tom comes over with his caretakers to watch cartoons, a simple joy that we share. They tell me it's the highlight of his week. Knowing this, feeling the warmth of our new friendship, fills my heart. It's a reminder of how unexpected connections can turn into cherished relationships.